So I just saw episodes 5 and 6 and am very overjoyed to report both were fairly amazing, but unfortunately bad news is episode 5 was probably one of the best things I've ever seen on television. So it's already on the GOAT list, but episode 6 was pretty good, very above average, but not, I think, super top tier television. Just, yeah, it was pretty good, but not all that great. Very tricky line between good and great. But let's get to the good stuff. So, episode 5. Well, it's not entirely faithful to what happened in the comic, but here I don't think that actually hurt it. I actually think this is a rare case where they actually added quite a lot that was not in the comic. I still prefer the comic because there, yes, there's a sacrifice, a trade off that you had to really show the craziness taking over the people fairly quickly. And I think they did a spectacular job. So Neil and Mike, really, really great work in the comic. But when you read it carefully, it is very short. So they had to get to things very quickly in terms of why is the ruby having this effect? How did it work? And where does this tie in with Morpheus? Because in the book, it is a very great revelation that he just shows up at the end and he's ready to go for a final fight. So it's pretty amazing. But this one, yes, it's slightly different in terms of plot structure and the way the characters work, but I liked a lot of these changes. I didn't mind it. I know some people are going to get annoyed by the diversity stuff, which I myself have been critical with the early episodes because I felt it didn't quite make a lot of sense or didn't work with the stories. I didn't find anything really too out there in this episode. There was just one line of dialogue where a woman talks about sexism. Thought that was a little bit too on the nose, but aside from a few nitpicks, yeah, this one was really amazing and entertaining, and it's still a little too dark for me. I mean, in terms of cinematography, I don't know why they keep going with these dark colors, brown, gray, black. I get it. It is meant to be a serious, somber, more reality-based fantasy story, but I don't know. They really need to up the colors. But here, I do think it was a little bit more balanced. We do get some more colorful outfits, more colorful personalities. It felt much more organic the way the characters related to one another. And no disrespect to Tom, but I do sense, and this is true in the comics as well, that the better issues or better stories with Sandman are not about Sandman. They're really about the more minor characters or when the stories move away from him and concentrate on other people. And here that really shows. I know some people may complain about how explicit the quote gay or bisexuality is being shown. That is in the comic. I did think they went overboard in the earlier episodes where in the comics it's more implicit, but here it actually is tonally appropriate. Although I will say this, sort of as a person from the 80s and 90s, I still find it weird that I know they have to update a few things. I think it would have been a much better idea to set this whole thing in the early to mid 90s. There's just something weird about using cell phones to communicate such deep emotive longings. I don't know, just physical media was much stronger in the 80s, even when shown fictionally in television and movies and comics. I don't know, there's just something weird about the way they use the phone. That's me. That's a minor nitpick. Overall, I really don't have much to criticize. The performances, camera movements, even things you thought were going to go one way in terms of how they're kind of, I wouldn't say exploiting, but using nudity and sexuality. It didn't go the way you thought. It was like, oh, are they going to just do another romance? Like, no, no, it's not going to go anywhere. It's more about disappointment. So it's a very amazing episode. Really not enough good things to say about the performers, the setting, production design. I still think the antagonist is coming off a little too sympathetic. I realize they're trying to do a different story and maybe moderate how Morpheus is coming off because really, if you read the comic, he does come off more villainous than heroic. But that is the character, so I understand they're trying to blunt some of his edges, but it's okay. I just would have probably chosen a different performer. And that gets us to episode 6, which was it was still very, very good in many ways. But and I don't blame them because again, the virus, they had to relocate the setting from New York to London. I'm not from New York. I wasn't born in New York, but I've been to New York tons of times. I've never been to London, but it is a very stark difference. So if you are a comic book reader, it was very, very disappointing because, again, the particular geography and geometry of the setting really, really is critical to the comic book and the comic book story. So this felt a little bit more dry and simple. This may be how London is and beautiful in its own way, but it just felt weird and off. Culturally, I am American, so I guess I'm not getting something that people would get from the London atmosphere, and I'm sure it seems the British fans didn't mind it at all. They got a lot out of it. This seems to be one of their favorite episodes from the other YouTube channels, and looking at a review articles, they really love this whole thing. And I'm still having a lot of problems why Kirby was chosen. She's not a bad actress, so it wasn't the nightmare I expected, but and it's not the thing people think I'm thinking of. Although it is noticeable, she doesn't physically look like various incarnations. I mean, Death was even once black, but she doesn't look like that version either. So I can see why they picked her, but I'm not seeing the charisma that she has. I guess the way she plays off of Tom was very interesting in terms of when they actually performed this. But I gotta say, the main cast in terms of the central characters are coming off fairly boring to me. I just don't care about them. I don't find them particularly interesting. I'm sure they're actually talented performers, but their interpretation of these roles is very much a snooze thing. The minor characters, on the other hand, tend to be much stronger. I guess the Corinthian is sort of in the middle. When he's on screen, he's very charismatic and very compelling. That's about it. Cain and Abel, I need more time on. But yeah, the minor characters and minor actors, I think, are way more interesting and have been far more convincing in their roles. But it's still a good episode. I can't say don't watch it. I thought it was appropriate that we've basically closed out one major story, and this is kind of an epilogue of him gathering his thoughts. And I know some people are going to complain on the alt-right, we hate the feminist kind of angle that, why is she talking down to him? Why is she disrespecting that beautiful white man? Why is she kicking him in the ass? That's in the comic. So it's fairly accurate. They did change a few things, which I thought were pointless in the dialogue, but so be it. But yeah, her basic disposition of him, her calling him out and being just such an idiot, an overprivileged idiot, moron, and him needing to appreciate the smaller things, that is in the comic. I guess it's just the way it's translated felt a little small. I think that's always the gap when human performers do cosmic entities. It'll always feel kind of weird. It can be done. I mean, look at Q and Next Generation. So it is possible, but it's very hard to do. So I just hope maybe the writing staff just had problems getting the rhythm of translating these comics, and that definitely showed with the first couple episodes. But these two stand out as way, way better than the first 4 episodes. And I will admit, I thought Joanna was going to be a real problem. I thought Joanna was really not going to work for you, but she actually turned out to be fairly decent. So maybe I just need more time with Tom and these other people. But so far, when we concentrate on Morpheus and his family, it so far has not been very interesting. But maybe it will get better and better. But I'm fearful it just plateaued. But if it did, it plateaued at a very high level, which is better than plateauing at a very low level, I guess.